Good morning. Welcome to Dash. It's lovely to see the crowd. And for those of you who are coming back from last year, we're really happy to have you back. And for those of you who are attending for the first time, well, I hope you had a good time yesterday. I hope the workshops gave you a good flavor for what Datadog and Dash is all about. I want to talk about a few special people that you'll hear from this morning. And these special people are our customers. They took really an active role in shaping the platform as it is today. How did they do it? Well, they reached out, and they were really open about the pain points they had. And so with them, we iterated again and again and again until we got the product to a point where we're both happy about. And so I realized it's not always easy, in a sort of customer-vendor relationship to be that open, to ask for help, and because you need trust to exist. So on behalf of the entire data community, I'd like to thank them for making Datadog, the product and platform, better for everyone. When we met at Dash last year, we talked about breaking down the silos that kept dev and ops apart. We talked about bringing all the data you need together in one place without effort so that you can understand production issues better and solve them faster. We talked about how we got started with infrastructure monitoring, and then we added tracing, and then logs, and then more, synthetics, and so on. But as we kept expanding the platform, we have asked ourselves at each step along the way, what else do you need to see to get the full observability of your stack? What kind of context could we give you that would give you that crucial insight while you're troubleshooting to get to the solution faster? And how can our platform help you and surface interesting things that you would not have known to look for otherwise? So we've been hard at work, and as a result, we have a number of really cool announcements to make this morning. For instance, oh, no, I'm not supposed to tell you yet. But let me tell you about something that feels very profound in the way we now build and operate software. It's the incredible rate of adoption of containers, serverless, mesh, service mesh, microservices, and so on. When I think about the amount of stuff that got created, the amount of tech that got created in the past 18, 24 months, it's mind-boggling. In fact, feels like a Cambrian explosion, all this new stuff. But with that explosion comes complexity and velocity to operate at scale. And in a previous life, when I was on call, I still am, and there was an issue, all I had to do is fire up a terminal, start screen or tmux, and I would just SSH around and just find my way to the problem, fix it, and get out, and that's all it took. But today, forget it. It's simply impossible for me and for you to keep everything that a modern platform has in your head. It's just too much. And even if you could, if you have a really good memory, the problem is the environment changes from 1 second to the next. So it's just too many things changing too fast. So our challenge at Datadog is to keep that complexity under control for you as you scale and as the industry around us continues to innovate at a rapid pace. And that makes observability at scale an absolute must-have if you want to build and deliver great services for your customers. Now, some companies have gotten a head start there because they've been at it for 15, 20 years. And luckily, we count them amongst our friends and partners. So we thought maybe you'd want to hear directly from them how they tackle the challenge of scale. It is my pleasure to introduce Aparna Sinha. Aparna works for Google, where she runs Kubernetes and Anthos. And she'll share with us how they came to be and how they've helped specifically Google run at that crazy scale. Now, she'll cover both the tech and the people stuff, because you need both in order to scale successfully. And that is what Dash is all about. Aparna, welcome to Dash. Take it away.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So it's my pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about how we think about scale at Google. As Alexis mentioned, I run the product team for Kubernetes in Google Cloud. So, there comes a time in the life of any successful company when it needs to scale to meet its users' demand. This could be, a hit startup from day one, or it could be later when your product really catches on. You have to meet that exponential curve. But actually, many applications are not architected to scale, at least not to scale efficiently, in a cost-effective way, or to scale quickly, both up and down with demand. So, if you have to bolt on scale later, this is very difficult to do. It's sort of like trying to change the tires on an accelerating train. There are many examples of startups that have failed to do this. There's also large companies that are well known to have gone through large infrastructure refreshes while they're also going through an exponential growth. And not everyone makes it out alive. Fortunately, we've solved some of these problems at Google over the past 20 years. And so, arguably, we've learned a few tips and tricks that allow us to kind of scale at scale. As an engineer at Google, you can write a service, and you can scale from 0 users to 1 billion users without really having to rewrite anything, and without having to architect the underlying infrastructure pieces or change them. That's pretty remarkable. And if you think about how this happens, this is not automatic. This is actually a lot of trial and error and a lot of things that we've done on the infrastructure side over the past 20 years to make this possible. And it's also what underlies Google Cloud and enables this capability for others. So what's the secret? Well, there are actually 2 secrets internally at Google, and one of them is Borg, which is our planetary scale cluster orchestration system. And the second one is, as Alexei was saying, the methods and the people behind site reliability engineering, SRE. I'm going to talk a little bit about both of them. So, and actually the unique thing about Google Cloud is that it sort of puts the power of both Borg and SRE into the hands of everyone, individual developers at large. So with services like BigQuery and Spanner, and then Google Kubernetes Engine, this is the service that I run, you get that capability. It's like getting on the express train from the get-go, so you don't have to worry about when you're going to scale. I'll show you a couple examples as well. So how do we do that? And I think the one thing that we've learned, most importantly, is to run everything in containers. Run everything as microservices. So we actually launch 4 billion containers per week, and it's constantly increasing. And why do we do that? Why do we use containers? There's many other mechanisms. But over the past 20 years, what we've learned is that containers are actually the most effective way to scale up and scale down cost efficiently and also quickly, so you can react to the demand. Then next comes the whole concept of orchestrating containers. Containers by themselves aren't enough in a global system. This is where Borg plays the critical role that it does internally at Google. The analog of Borg, of course, is Kubernetes, which we've contributed as an open source project. and then GKE, the piece that we run in the cloud, which is managed Kubernetes. GKE is actually much more than Kubernetes itself. It bakes in ease of use, so you can provision Kubernetes very easily and don't have to manage it. It also provides advanced autoscaling. This is one of the most loved capabilities, four-way autoscaling that scales your pods and services, scales your clusters, and also right-sizes both the pods and the clusters. So it's quite complex, but also easy to use. It also has a very lightweight container operating system, which is also very secure. And that allows you to start and stop containers quickly. And then, of course, the secret sauce, which is it's managed by a set of SREs. So it's become a very popular product. 80+% of our top customers use GKE. And some of the feedback, they say it's like magic, particularly for scaling in a cost-effective way. And it's used everywhere. It's used in banks, it's used in retail, it's even used for pizza delivery. It's becoming very ubiquitous. So we've been investing in how do we scale Kubernetes further. I'm going to talk a little bit about scalability challenges in Kubernetes itself. We started down this path from the beginning, but this was one of the major milestones. About 3 years ago, we had Pokemon Go, which became an overnight hit, much larger than the company that was producing the game expected, 50x larger demand than they expected. And every weekend they would have a new rollout in a new geography, and it would exceed what they had expected. So we learned on GKE how we scale to meet the needs of Pokemon Go, and created, of course, for them several capabilities that are now table stakes, but then also started investing in how do we run large clusters across multiple zones so that they have high availability. And how do we run a large cluster across multiple zones efficiently? Also, how can we auto-scale more quickly so that the entire cluster auto-scales up and down as needed? Since then, we've increased the scale in Kubernetes to 5,000 nodes. And we've been working on, with a large 5,000 node cluster, how do you bin pack it with multiple teams and multiple workloads for the maximum efficiency? And then lastly, you want to have multiple of these 5,000 node clusters. There are customers that have 40,000 nodes. How do you run multiple clusters together efficiently? So some of the work, actually, this is still ongoing, has led us to find that scale in Kubernetes is multidimensional. So I talked about 5,000 node clusters. Actually, as you scale up to 5,000 node clusters, you find that the number of pods that you can have becomes more restricted because of the networking restrictions, the amount of IP address space you have. Also, the number of services that you have is related to how many pods and how many nodes you have. So it's a kind of a scalability envelope that you have to pay attention to. So there's ongoing work that we're doing on improving the scalability envelope. We're also working on, of course, decoupling these axes from each other. So you decouple how many nodes you can have from how many pods you can have from how many services you can have. And then individually scale those up. And this is a lot of the work that's in progress on the GKE team. So we talked a little bit about Borg and cluster scaling. The second element that I was talking about is SRE. And so I just want to touch on that because Kubernetes has actually become quite popular. Many people are using it, potentially also in this audience. But the SRE techniques, while we've written several books on it, they're a lot less well adopted. And I think a lot of the tooling that Datadog is building and that's getting to be more widely available is essential to the SRE function and is critical for running services at large scale. So more than anything, SRE is about observability. You have to measure everything, and you have to automate as much of it as you can. Automate the toil away, ideally in a closed loop, setting policies to accomplish the desired SLOs. Internally at Google, we make sure that we have tooling that as developers write applications, that tooling exposes metrics at multiple levels, at the container level, at the service level, at the application level, exposes metrics about how the application is performing, also about what is accessing the application, what are the traffic patterns internally. And then we have mechanisms for remediating and setting SLOs, and then ultimately closed-loop policies. So in terms of a real-world example, leaving Google, eBay is a company that has been using GKE for many years. And it became so popular, they had many of their teams developing all of their new applications on GKE. Ultimately, they found that they have hundreds of microservices running, and their platform team really could not get a handle on which new services were being created, which ones were communicating with which other services. And so this led to tremendous operational complexity. Now, of course, every developer team has the freedom to develop in whichever application they want. And so they're using different types of monitoring tools and different capabilities. The way eBay solved this problem is by adopting Istio. Istio is an L7 proxy. It creates a service mesh, and I'm going to show you an example of that in a minute. But what they were able to do with Istio is, without troubling their developers, without having the developers rewrite their applications, they were able to get a bird's eye view of all of the services in their environment. And this really helped them because they could discover new services as they were coming along, and they could see which services were having trouble. And they could also secure the services at scale. So I think they said something like it greatly reduced their operational complexity, and they were finally able to uniformly monitor and control their systems. Earlier this year, we announced Anthos. Anthos is a platform that integrates and combines the capabilities of GKE with Istio in a single package, and it's something that you can run on-prem. You can run it, of course, in cloud. And so it brings the best of those two things together so that you can actually enable SRE tooling along with container orchestration. So I'm going to try and show you a quick demo of what that looks like. Let's see if we can switch over. OK. So this is an application, an online shopping application, and this is just the front page. But if we look at this application, it's running in Google Cloud, actually on GKE, and we've enabled Istio, so we can create a service mesh. So this is what the service mesh looks like. Here you can see all of the services that make up that online shopping application, the ad service, the cart service, the checkout service, and so forth. And we're collecting all of these metrics. And Istio can be bolted onto an existing set of microservices, so there's no change required to the microservice. But you start getting these error rates and latency information and what's happening there. You also start knowing whether there is an SLO policy set. And if you've set an SLO policy, you can see whether it's within budget or not. So you get kind of that view. The other view, there's a topology view, which is nice, kind of a bird's eye view to see which services are connected to which other services. Like, for example, in the case of eBay, this was very critical, so they could get a handle on the entire environment. So we see here, this is the front end, and if we scroll down, this is the workload that's backing the front end, so it's a set of deployments. And then this is the checkout service, and we can kind of hopefully zoom into the checkout service a little bit. And then as you zoom into it, you will be able to see all the other services that are connected to the checkout service. So you can see what the dependencies are. So in this case, the payment service, the product catalog. You don't get that topology view from the list, but from the topology, you can see what's connected to what. And of course, the drill down into each of the metrics for those services. And then if you go to the service dashboard, let's say for the catalog checkout service, actually this is the dashboard for the checkout service, you can see if it's out of budget. And if there are recommendations for how to fix it, the tool will often have automation built into it as well, which allows you to change certain things to improve the health of the service. So this is really critical tooling for what is the SRE function. We can go back to the slides, please. So with Anthos, it bundles in the service mesh along with GKE, so you have the enablement for developers to run at scale and also for SREs to be able to secure, manage, and control your traffic across your entire environment. So that's the tooling, the toolkit. But the most important step, perhaps, is the cultural change and the people change to run like an SRE organization. And this is really where the book is helpful. But just to summarize, there are a few key mindsets that are SRE mindsets. One of them is to accept failure as normal. And this has been something that we do internally, I would say, practice regularly, which is through the process of blameless postmortems. So things go wrong all the time. We do blameless postmortems where there's a lot of psychological safety, and that's what allows us to figure out what truly is the root cause of the problem and to put in place fixes that avoid that problem from occurring again. The second tenet is really to reduce organizational silos. So for example, in the eBay example, you had all of these services that were being created by different teams. And you have to do that to be able to run effectively. But reducing organizational silos really comes down to setting SLOs and error budgets between teams and between services so they have that communication of what they can expect. And then lastly, I think this one is particularly important for cloud as well, is to implement change gradually. That really comes down to implementing your rollouts in Canary, gradual rollouts, and always building in the capability to roll back. These sound like simple things to do, but they actually require years of practice and enforcement, particularly in large organizations, and particularly when you're running services at scale. So in summary, architect for scale from the beginning. It's very difficult to bolt on later on. Use tooling for observability on automation, so something like an Anthos. And then really adopt the SRE mindsets and invest in culture change amongst your people. With that, hopefully you can scale like a champ. And of course, don't forget to make it as easy and simple looking as Google search. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. This was great. I was doing some quick math in my head. 2006, 6,600 containers per second. That's roughly 2.7 trillion containers since it started. So if you imagine each individual container emits a bunch of metrics and traces and logs, that's a ton of data to deal with just to figure out what's going on. Now, Google may be along the way, a bit further along the way than most of us. I think they've paved the way to make it easier for the community to scale. And maybe to help me there, how many people, show of hands, use containers in production? It's a big group. So I'm sure you've experienced it. When you start to containerize your environment, the amount of observability data that you generate is an order of magnitude greater than when you had sort of simpler architecture, multi-tier, non-containerized. As a Datadog, we've been through that exact transition, so we have first-hand experience. And that experience led us to revisit some of the choices we made early on in infrastructure monitoring, particularly when it comes to metrics. And I think we've come up with some interesting ideas, which we're going to share with you in a minute. And to give you more details into these new ideas about metrics, I'd like to invite to the stage someone who thinks about metrics day in and day out. He's our lead product manager for infrastructure monitoring. Please welcome Michael to the stage.
Thank you, Alexi. It's great to be here. Your businesses run on metrics. You might be instrumenting hundreds of microservices, and they might be orchestrated in containers from host to host. But you use custom metrics to measure values globally. Time on page, dollars per customer, items bought, trips taken, widgets produced, data from fleets of mobile devices and smart sensors. All those things by which you measure your business performance, in addition to the application performance and infrastructure health. Last year, we announced logging without limits. With this feature, we recognize that not all logs are valuable, or at least not valuable all of the time. As customers, you send us arbitrary volumes of metric data and instrument up the stack, or embrace containerization and full mesh multi-tenancy. We understand that not all time series are valuable all of the time as well, and that you do not want to pay for time series that you do not intend to query. This is especially true of business metrics. Business data is valuable in aggregate, not necessarily in detail. You care about the customer, him or herself, not the shard or container their request was load balanced to. For other metrics, you need the deepest level of granularity at all times. This is why I am excited to announce metrics without limits. Send us all your data and pay for what is valuable to you. Limits are not the capacity to store and query, but the freedom to use Datadog for everything that is valuable to you within the observability budget that you have established. This has effectively decoupled the instrumentation of metrics from ingest and query. We'll ingest and process metrics at 10 cents for every 100 metrics, which makes it very affordable and easy to send us that data. Then you can drop tags and persist and query data that is useful for you. This still includes the full 15 months at 1 second granularity for the entire period. In order to provide this freedom, though, we also provide flexibility. All aggregation for metric without limits is done in-app. There's no agent or code changes necessary. You send us all the data that you always have and dynamically decide what to keep or drop on the fly. I'll show you. So here I've instrumented my example from before, the amount of money each customer pays shopping on my site. I might not want to pay for customer-level granularity all of the time, because it's not necessary to describe the health of my business. Here, I'm going to edit and drop the host tag. I will also have, so here I will drop the host tag. And I also have a set of tags that are available by default that come with the metric. And I've removed customer ID. I don't need this tag to report the health of my product line to my CEO. So now I'll go to a dashboard. And I can see that I'm aggregating out fewer time series and therefore paying for fewer time series. I'll drop the user ID here as well. But what happens if metric behavior crosses an unacceptable threshold? Or I want to do deep user research. Here I can see in my example that latency has gone above 300 milliseconds on a subset of my shards. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to add user ID back in. This way, I can find out who's load balanced to which shards, and I can get in touch with them and let them know a fix is in flight. I can also go ahead and fix my load balancing so that we fix the issue. I'm going to leave my demo off here, but after my incident is resolved, I can go ahead and drop that tag again. I'm happy to present Calvin French-Owen, the CTO and co-founder at Segment, and a longtime partner and customer of ours, who has helped us design and build this feature.
Thank you, Michael. Now, I won't belabor how important metrics are to a business, but suffice to say, it's clear that if you're running a large, high-throughput web application, you need to understand what's going on at every layer of the stack, from your core infrastructure to your business logic, all the way up to that user experience. And the reality that I think at least I've been hearing, I hope you have too, from the other speakers, Aparna and Alexis, is that getting that level of visibility is really more complex in today's cloud environment than ever before. And at least in our case, we have tens of engineering teams who are building hundreds of microservices, who are running on thousands of EC2 instances, which are then running tens of thousands of Docker containers, which come and go at a moment's notice. And at least for us, keeping track of all of that is incredibly difficult. So over the next 5 minutes, I'd like to share some of the challenges that we faced building out Segment and how Datadog and their metrics product has helped us solve those. Now, before I get started, I wanted to share a little bit about what Segment is and what Segment does, just to give you the context for the scale that we're operating in. Kind of at the core of it, Segment provides our customers with customer data infrastructure. We help thousands of businesses around the world understand who their users are and what they're doing so that they can give a first, best-in-class customer experience to all of their users and understand the complete customer journey. And concretely, what that looks like is something like what's on the slide behind me. Basically, Segment helps you take data from different sources here on the left. This might be your web application. It might be your mobile apps. Or maybe it's places where your code isn't running, but your customers are still interacting with you. Tools like Zendesk and Salesforce. We help you get that data into one consistent place, and then we help you send it to whatever tools you might be using. This could be a data warehouse like Redshift or BigQuery. Or it might be an analytics tool like Google Analytics or Mixpanel. Or maybe it's an email tool like SendGrid or Customer.io. Kind of the key insight is that no matter what your data looks like or what tools you're using, your teams need to all understand the same information, which is just who is my customer and what are they doing. And in terms of scale, that's actually taken us to some really interesting places. If we look at Segment by the numbers today, we're collecting 360 billion events every single month. Now, inbound, that translates to about 200,000 incoming HTTP requests. But of course, we fan that out. And then outbound, it's more like 400,000 concurrent requests. Powering all that infrastructure is 15,000 containers running on ECS and 250 different microservices. And today, we're serving thousands of customers, from startups like Confluent, GitHub, Atlassian, through some of the world's largest global brands like Intuit, IBM, and Levi's. But of course, with that scale comes a few different problems for us. I'd like to focus on one today. A lot of times we have a question like this. We're trying to send data into Salesforce on behalf of some sort of customer, and we see a lot of 401s coming back from it. And immediately we want to understand why. Is it a single customer whose API keys have somehow expired? They stopped paying for Salesforce? Is it a bunch of customers who are all experiencing a global outage? Is there some sort of network disconnect? Did we push some bad code? What's going on? And the reason this is so hard to answer at our sort of scale is what I'd call the platform problem. Kind of at the core, our state space is unbounded by what our users send us. And to give you a sense of the cardinality here, essentially, Segment is trying to collect data from 100,000 different data sources today. We then send that data to more than 250 different destinations, and each one of them might respond with one of 1,300 different error codes. And what that means is a lot of metrics, 33 billion different time series that we could possibly be collecting. So obviously, we don't want to be spending our time building out this metrics infrastructure, and instead we rely on Datadog to do so for us. Here's an example of one of our actual dashboards that we use to monitor our infrastructure. Not only does it give us deep insight into how these individual customers are behaving, but it also lets us slice and dice by any of our different custom tags and metrics using the tools that Michael just outlined before me. Additionally, there are certain questions that we have all the time. Things like, how is integration X behaving? Or how much traffic are we sending to integration Z? And for that, we've started using this aggregation framework. We want to be able to answer these questions really quickly without having to pay for the overhead of the deep dives where we only need the occasional insight. Now, by the numbers, to give you a sense of how this looks within our organization, we're using Datadog everywhere. To date, we've created more than 950 different dashboards and around 1,000 different monitors, but really it's spread throughout the whole organization. Not only is our engineering team using it, but our customer support, our sales team, and our account managers are all going to this place for their data to understand what's going on in the infrastructure so we can communicate that well to our customers. Of course, I'd say all of these internal processes are really useful, but they're sort of table stakes when it comes to a business. And really what we want to figure out is how do we then provide more value on top of those metrics to all of our users. As I said, there's some of the table stakes stuff, which is creating alerts when things go wrong. But more recently, we've been investing to understand where we should be spending our time as a business. We've used Datadog's SLO feature to understand how close we are in error budget. And literally every team can see and understand where they should be spending their time, whether it's building new features or focusing on reliability. Additionally, we've taken all this data and actually made it available to our customers. We baked it into the core part of the product. If you go to our status page today, you'll see these metrics here, which actually are pulled from our live production Datadog metrics, which give our customers the confidence and insight into how their data pipeline is behaving. And then probably the one I'm most excited about, we're just now announcing an integration with Datadog that lets customers see not only how the service is working at an aggregate level, but what is happening specifically with their own data. They can understand the latency that it's taking to get their data into Google Analytics, how long it takes to load their warehouse, and whether they might have a single failing API key that lets them get first-class visibility into how their data pipelines are behaving. So if I could leave you with one thought in closing, observability is really the key to how we run Segment, not only for our internal teams, but making its way all the way to our product, our customers, and the value that they provide, knowing that they are relying on a world-class customer data infrastructure that's both reliable and meets their scale. And really, Datadog and its metrics product that we've helped develop help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Calvin. What we've shown you here today with Metrics Without Limits is how you can provide additional value and control to your dev and ops teams without sacrificing the ability to drill down into the finest grained details. Metrics Without Limits is available in technical preview now, and I'll be on the floor during the conference, or reach out to your account manager for details about how to sign up. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael, and thank you very much, Calvin. I love to hear how Segment dialed the volume all the way to 11 in terms of data they send us. But then they were able to keep that slice and dice that matters, to help them focus with surgical precision on what the issue is. Metrics Without Limits, send as much as you want, only pay for what you need. I like that. This is going to change the way you consume metrics. And our own integrations are going to lead the way. So please, if you get a chance, try it. Try Metrics Without Limits. And we're really looking forward to your feedback. Now, let's talk about something else, the network. There was a quick preview before I spoke. It's funny because when you run containers, all these containers on clouds, you forget easily that they're connected to one another by some fairly deep piece of engineering called the network. I remember when I was touching networking gears, all the depth that there was, all the neat tricks you could play with switches and routers. The truth is, that stuff's still here. It's taken a slightly different form. It's a lot less visible, especially if you run in cloud, but it's still here. And it matters immensely. Regardless of where you run, the network is still a critical part of your stack, of the quality of service. So at Datadog, we thought we needed to give you some insight into where the bits and the bytes are flowing to help you get the big picture. To talk about the network and what we do with it, I'd like to invite our lead product manager, Miranda, to the stage. She'll tell you how we've started to consume network data and what it looks like in Datadog. Please, Miranda.
Many of us are migrating towards microservices and increasingly distributed systems. Your infrastructure is not only running the code that you wrote, but includes services from multiple cloud platforms, managed services, Lambdas, and databases. And it's difficult to see the 1,000-foot view of where all of that data is going. At the end of the day, communication between these services is critical to your end user experience. So how do you understand the dependencies between these components? You have probably SSH'd into a host to run NetTop, looked at raw bandwidth and packet counts, but this only shows you one host at a time. Cloud services do provide network bandwidth data, but how do you tie it back into your services or applications that you're running? So neither of these options can be resolved to something that really matters to you. And so because of this, I am happy to announce a new product from Datadog, Network Performance Monitoring. Network performance monitoring provides visibility across any of your tags, from high-level tags like availability zones and services, all the way down to the container and even process levels. This allows you to aggregate your network metrics across any two types of objects, across your infrastructure and applications, and whether or not this is hosted on-prem or in the cloud. Datadog Network Monitoring helps provide immediate insight into your performance and dependencies. Datadog begins by collecting network metrics and creating aggregate views without any instrumentation. In the first 30 seconds, you can see the 1,000-foot view of your network connections. Maybe one of your coworkers has added a managed service, which is inadvertently using up all of your bandwidth. Or maybe you're syncing all of your assets from a file server on the other side of the world, when you really should have just been reading it from your local cache. You can view this data on the service level or a different aggregation like availability zones or services, or even organizational elements like teams seen here. And on top of this, you can visualize your bandwidth data or TCP retransmit counts. Suppose you're running monitors on your services. You can identify the services that are currently in an error state. And you can dive in to see both incoming and outgoing traffic to your specific node, as well as any additional dependencies. If you're looking to get more granular data, you can navigate to the Network Explorer, like here on the left. And suppose you're tasked with reducing cross-availability zone traffic. You can select the source and destination as availability zone, and filter your source service by something like Elasticsearch. Type it in here, or really any facet that you're interested in. And you can see here that Elasticsearch is talking across availability zones. So you can dig in more here to gather more data and you might be able to reduce your transit costs of AWS by creating a duplicate instance per availability zone. We've partnered with Brent here at Cvent, or here at Datadog, he's from Cvent, while building out network performance monitoring. If you don't already know, Cvent powered our registration here at Dash. We're excited to have him join us on stage and tell us about his experience using Datadog network performance monitoring.
Thanks, Miranda. Our platform streamlines everything from creating an event website, to finding the right venue, to getting hotel rooms for your attendees. This lets event planners focus on what matters, bringing people like us together to build those face-to-face connections. Within Cvent, S3 sets standards and provides tooling that empowers other teams to deliver reliable, scalable, and performant systems for our customers. Over time, our systems have become increasingly complex. We've been converting to microservices, moving to containers, and integrating acquisitions. One thing that helps us manage this complexity is Datadog APM. It provides our teams the context they were missing in a highly distributed system, context that helps facilitate those teams' ability to troubleshoot and resolve issues. It's the same level of context that Datadog has delivered with network performance monitoring. As Cvent software has grown more complex, so have the underlying systems that they run on. We've grown from a single data center to running on both data center and cloud environments across many regions over the world. With this migration, we lack visibility into what our infrastructure is actually doing and are forced to rely on our expectations. With Datadog NPM, we gain visibility on what our underlying infrastructure depends on. Because it uses data from the entire Datadog ecosystem, we can view and filter on our existing tags and gain additional context right out of the box. This allows us to identify unknown dependencies or misconfigurations where we previously lacked visibility. We can also use this to answer questions about our infrastructure and make informed decisions to improve our reliability, optimize for cost, or further improve our architecture. We're not only able to gain this visibility into the host, but the processes and containers that run on them. The agent is able to correlate data down to the process and the containers they run in. This allows us to further understand where these dependencies originate. It's especially powerful for us since we run most of our services in containers and are still in that migration. This level of granularity allows us to start at the global scale and drill in to help pinpoint exactly what we're looking for within our infrastructure. The increased visibility isn't just limited to the infrastructure that we own. With Datadog NPM, we can see anything from inside our network or outside our network, including apps that are not built by us. We're very interested in how we can leverage this information to gain visibility into our changing security landscape as well. As we add additional services and acquire new companies, there's an increased risk that changes could impact our security posture. Our hope is that Datadog NPM can help us provide improved visibility for our security health as well as our system health. We're happy to be partnering with Datadog, with the Datadog team to help shape this product. We believe the visibility that Datadog NPM provides will continue to help us improve and deliver new products to our customers. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to Miranda.
Datadog Network Performance Monitoring is currently in beta. So if you're interested in becoming an early partner, please see us at the network station this afternoon. So far, we've talked all about collecting metrics. Metrics without limits, network performance monitoring, which is great. But once we have this data, how can we make the most of it? Please welcome Celene from our data science team, who will share more about how she's helping us find the signal in the noise.
And we'll never be royal. It's a running out of blood. That kind of luck's just ain't for.
Thank you, Miranda.
even the best of us encounter downtime. The minutes spent discovering and resolving an issue can be critical to you and your users. At Datadog, one of our goals is to help you find your issues, including those lurking beneath the surface, fast. We're developing ways to use machine learning to find problems in your services and infrastructure and help to understand them. Last year at Dash, we announced Watchdog for our APM customers. Watchdog finds anomalies in your services and tells you about them in an easy-to-digest story format. The best part, there's no configuration necessary, it just works. The way it works is it takes key service metrics, analyzes the last several weeks of data, and determines the bounds of normal. Then, it looks at the latest data and decides if these are anomalous based on those bounds. This has proven to be so effective in providing useful, actionable information for our APM customers that we decided to broaden its scope and availability. So today, I am very excited to bring you infrastructure stories in Watchdog, which will make smart issue detection available for all of our customers. Watchdog will now find your memory leaks, jumps in TCP retransmits, and problems with integrations, such as Redis, Postgres, Nginx, ELB, and S3. For example, perhaps there is a slow, undetected leak in memory in one of your application's hosts, trending towards a tipping point to wreak havoc. Or you notice an unexpected spike in latency in your Redis instance. Watchdog will find these and tell you about them, potentially before the realization of a bigger problem. These infrastructure story types are now available in beta, and there's more under development, so stay tuned. In addition to helping you find issues, the data science team considered how we could help to understand them. So today, I am also excited to bring you a new tool called correlations. Let's say you noticed a jump in errors or a spike in latency, and you want to investigate. You can then use correlations to scan thousands of metrics across APM, dashboards, integrations, and even custom metrics to find related behaviors and get closer to unveiling the root cause. Correlations is available from Watchdog, as well as dashboards, notebooks, and monitors with just the click of a button. And you can use facets to quickly hone in on scopes that are particularly compelling to you. Enough talk, let's see it in action. I am pleased to welcome Vishesh Sharma to the stage from Capital One, who will demonstrate how his team has benefited from Datadog's latest smart features.
Hello everyone, I'm Vishesh Sharma. I'm part of Enterprise SRE team at Capital One, where one of my objectives is to integrate tools like Datadog into day-to-day workflows of Capital One's engineering teams. Recently, I have created a dashboard to help incident responders to triage symptoms of a problem. Here in this dashboard, you can see that a Lambda function has started to become really slow. Let's run correlations on this issue. Correlations identified a similar behavior in AWS SQS and AWS Lambda. So let's dive into the correlated SQS metrics. So here we can see that the number of total messages in SQS also spiked around the same time. And after seeing the tags, the messages are coming from ASV network flow automation application. So this gives us a great starting point to continue our investigation. Lambdas are often talk to each other. Let's see what correlations we found in lambdas bucket. So here we can see that the number of invocations also heavily correlated, and most of them are coming from a payment management application. So this gives us another strong candidate to work on. So to summarize, the correlations feature is a great tool to troubleshooting issues. We can quickly cast a wide net and find candidates for the root cause analysis. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vishesh. It's great to see how Capital One is using one of Datadog's newest features, and I'm excited to bring Watchdog and correlations to all of you. To find out more, stop by our booth after the keynote. Thank you.
Thanks, Vishesh, and thanks, Celene, for showing us how Watchdog and correlations really do the heavy lifting that help you zero in on metrics that matter. Now, so far, we've talked about infrastructure monitoring, metrics without limits, network performance monitoring, Watchdog for infrastructure, and correlations. Now, I'm sure you're curious about what we've been up to with logs. Since we launched Datadog Logs in 2018, we've seen a lot of adoption. You've sent us a lot of logs, so thank you very much. And you haven't been shy about where you want us to go with the product. Now, the good news is we've been pretty busy. And we have a couple of interesting things to share with you this morning. And for that, I'd like to invite the head product manager for logs, Renaud, to the stage.
Thank you, Alexis. As you know, Datadog Log Management was launched in March 2018, and we are happy to see how customers adopted this solution. We are now ingesting hundreds of terabytes of logs every day for thousands of companies all around the world. It provides a seamless experience for DevOps engineers, with hundreds of Datadog integrations that are now collecting metrics and logs, sharing the same tags. So when you see the interface for the first time, everything is pre-canned, easy to use, and you seamlessly pivot from and to logs, metrics, and traces. Last year at Dash, we announced a very appreciated addition to the product. I think you know where I'm going. Logging without limits. We are now where you can decouple what you ingest and what you indexed, which unlocked so many capabilities, such as you are now able to send all your logs affordably with no server-side filtering anymore. Then observe them in real time through the live tail. Importantly, you can dynamically control what is indexed through exclusion filter depending on situations. And you can sleep peacefully because all these logs are archived into the cold storage of your choice. Monitoring the backend is critical for ensuring that your requests are properly delivered to your end users. And you're already well covered with Datadog. However, some questions still arise, like, are my users truly happy with their experience? Do they get some errors? The fact is that you don't know because you are not necessarily looking at it. So this is why today I'm very happy to announce that Datadog is officially entering into the front-end monitoring space with the JavaScript integration. This is a simple JavaScript library designed to collect all the console logs automatically and send them straight to Datadog. You can also use it as a logger, where you can enrich every JSON entries with attributes and context. And URLs, client IPs, and user agents are automatically collected, parsed, and named the right way. So correlating your front end to your back end is just made simple. I'm going to continue this story with these new browser logs. Let's say you have a huge number of users which subsequently generate a large amount of logs. Unfortunately, indexing them all will be considered as cost prohibitive. What is nice here is that I can keep 5% of them, defining a sampling exclusion filter on my index. And the team is very happy because they can still see everything that is going on, especially as you don't lose a single of them because all these logs are still going into the AWS S3 archives. Now, what if the team wants to keep track of the actual count of errors by browser families? And this is going to be my second surprise this year. Yes, Datadog is now able to generate metrics from logs. And let me highlight this very important point. It works at ingest level. So you can actually summarize very affordably large quantity of logs into very efficient custom metrics. Here, how that works. In the log menu, you'll find a new Generate Metrics tab. Then step 1, you'll tell us what you want to summarize. In that case, I'm going to keep my browser logs in errors. Then tell us the content of your summary. Like, it's going to be a simple count with 3 attributes, the error kind, the browser family, and I'm also going to keep the domain name. I name it, and then Datadog is now maintaining these log-based metrics and will retain it for 15 months. You'll also be able to use all the machine learning, forecasting, anomaly detection algorithms, among others, that are available with Datadog metrics. This is an extremely valuable addition to Logging Without Limits. All right. While these were exciting announcements, we saved the best for last. A user comes to me and say that he experienced a failure but 3 months ago. The problem is that I don't see the logs in Datadog anymore. So what should I do? Should I look into the archives? We all know that trying to find logs in cold storages is slow and difficult. So this is why today we came up with a solution we are particularly proud of: log rehydration. Like in this specific example, where I'm looking at the browser logs of my user John Doe, this specific day in May, my log explorer remains empty. However, just by clicking here, no new query syntax to learn. We are preparing the rehydration job for you, on which we'll find the right files, scan them to match your query, and finally reload only the log events you need to understand what happened. And in most cases, in less than a minute, I can start troubleshooting as if these logs had always been there. Use cases are various, as you'll be able to run technical audits, like the troubleshooting example here. Business audits, like should I really refund my customer, and I'm going to just prove that looking at my logs. Or security audits. We believe this is a game changer. And we are already seeing a lot of excitement around rehydration. But as each business, each application, each team is unique, we wanted to give you another point of view from a customer today. They'll tell us about how they use Logging Without Limits to ensure the quality of service of their 28 million subscribers. Hulu. Let me call on stage Kartik Garg, Director of Cloud and Platform Engineering at Hulu.
Then we go back. This is the moment. Tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over. So we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us.
Thank you, Renaud. Really, really glad to be here. I wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction about how I came to know about Datadog logging. And the story starts about a year ago when a colleague of mine in my previous company, Alan Ranciato, he came up to me and he told me, hey, I checked out Datadog logging. Looks really cool. Can you check it out? I said, sure. Comes back to me about a week later. Did you get a chance to check it out? I'm like, no, not really. It's like, you should really check it out. I'm like, sure. A couple more weeks pass by, and Alan comes right back to me. He's like, hey, so did you finally get a chance to check out Datadog logging? And I said, no, I'm perfectly happy with our current logging solution. And he said, we think you should really give them a shot. So here I am, about a year later, talking about Datadog logging and why it makes sense for Hulu. But a little bit about Hulu before I jump into why Datadog makes sense for Hulu, so you can get an idea of the scale at which we operate Datadog, especially for logs. Hulu is now the fastest growing video service in the United States. And we grew from 20 million to 28 million subscribers between 2017 and 2018. Our total hours watched have increased by 75%. So not only are we growing in terms of the number of people that want to watch content on Hulu, but for a given user, we're growing the amount of content that they actually watch on Hulu. We have over 100 teams globally across 3 locations. I come from Santa Monica, so pardon my jet lag if you see any. We have a team in Seattle and a team that's in Beijing as well. And we started out at Hulu about 10 years ago with microservices. So we have over 1,000 services. And an unofficial count reveals that we've had team members consume over 1 million snacks. But we have one purpose, and that is you, our viewer. So let's take a look at why Datadog, which obviously besides Alan telling me it's a good idea, one of our core values is to start with the viewer. And that's kind of enshrined into when you, first day when you come into Hulu, the first thing they tell you is we start with the viewer. And that's powerful because we don't just want to know about a viewer or some viewers or this viewer or that viewer. It's the viewer. We want to know everything about each one of our viewers' experience, which means a lot of logs. And we can't possibly index everything that we ingest, hence logging without limits. So let's talk a little bit about our scale of logs and what we consume. Here you can see our log dashboard. And I'll kind of drill into the logs that we consume. So we're in the business of live TV. For those of you who are in the media and entertainment, you'll know that live TV prime time is between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. Pacific, or 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. Eastern, which means logs. Lots and lots and lots of logs, which at peak is close to 150 logs per minute. 150 million logs per minute, not 150 logs per minute. Sometimes our logs get away from us, and we want to be able to detect those anomalies when our logs do get away from us. So without log metrics, doing and finding those anomalies was pretty tricky, honestly. Let's take a look at our log counts. We see that there's nothing out of the ordinary over here. I mean, these are the services that we expect to emit a lot of logs. So then we go back, and let's take a look at the log size. Why, hello, Loki. And this service is emitting close to twice the size of logs as the next highest service. Well, we never look at Loki logs, so let's fix that. Another one of the features that Renaud announced over here was archive rehydration, and we're already seeing uses of that. And one of the uses that we saw, and this is kind of stolen right from Renaud's slide over here, is a user got a significant error. In our case, it was a month ago. And the responsiveness of a specific part of the Hulu browsing experience was significantly degraded. But we were not sure why. Heimdall, which is our edge browsing experience, team looked at countless logs from our S3 archives. So what we did was, in this case, we loaded their logs from archive using rehydration for a specific duration to figure out what was happening in concert to some of the surrounding services. And by looking at the neighboring services, we were able to figure out that we should be looking at this user for that service for a specific time period. So we popped that into the UI. We waited for about 30 minutes, caught up on our favorite episode. You can do the same. Simpsons Family Guy, or the Simpsons Family Guy crossover on Hulu, as Datadog crunched through about 20 terabytes of logs during that time period. And we found that one user was hitting our service with 200 response code back to them about 8,300 times in 30-minute windows, so that's about 5 times a second. So ladies and gentlemen, that's what a site scraper looks like. And the fact that a single Hulu user was potentially able to harm the experience for other users on Hulu brings us back to a very important point about why this is so important for us. Our viewers, you just want to watch TV. And TV has always just worked. If you remember, for those of you that have kids, when you were a kid yourself, you'd be standing there with these rabbit ear antennas trying to hold it just right in like these varied positions so that your parents could obviously watch TV. And then it was buried cable after that. Managed networks, more choices, physical wiring into your home, dedicated payload of multimedia. And then about a decade ago, or about 15 years ago, it all got changed up again. DVR, on demand. But we're now at another inflection point, and this is where our viewers' habits are changing. Because now it's not about live or on demand. For our viewers, for you, a Game of Thrones finale is almost the same as an NBA final. But if you think about the complexities of those, it's pretty different. So what we are doing at Hulu is trying to build TV around you on top of an infrastructure that was not built for serving TV over the internet. So previously we had closed and controlled, fully controlled networks. Now we're relying on open internet, lots of network of routers and switches, cloud experience, lots of players, lots of technology, no single source from, basically not a single player from the source to the last mile. And that brings a lot of challenges when we're trying to deliver reliable, low latency video to our viewers. And on top of that, this is complicated by the fact that there isn't standard adoption, unlike other areas. So our markers for when an episode starts or ends, there's no standardization around that. Metadata isn't standardized. But we love complexity at Hulu. And so we dare you to dream of better TV with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kartik. That was great. I want to say that everything is available today to log management users, the JavaScript integration, log-based metrics, and log rehydration. Please come to our booth where we're going to explain all the details to you. Thank you.
Please welcome Chief Product Officer for Datadog, Amit Agarwal.
She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get sun.
Working? Good. Thank you, Renaud and Kartik. That was great. I'm here to talk about something else. As you all know, when we have millions of customers using our applications, we use established data science techniques like sampling and statistical analysis to make sense of how our applications are behaving. But as you also know, many times our customer experiences in aggregate are not representative of specific problems for specific customers. In fact, from our own experiences at Datadog, we know that understanding specific and representative problems for real customers is key to acting on aggregates and delivering great experiences to everyone. Now, the rest of the world sees gathering all of this data as useful, but prohibitively expensive. And we've taken a different approach to this. In earlier presentations, you saw glimpses of this approach, which is gathering all the observable data in simple, efficient ways, letting you, the customer, decide later what you want to keep that provides you the granularity you need to understand the pain of a specific user at any given time. To show you how we're doing this in another area of the product, here's Priyanshi from our APM team.
Thanks, Amit. Well, what do developers really care about? As you have heard about today, Datadog is moving closer to monitoring the end user. And the reason is because we asked this question to you. And the answer was clear. You care about delivering great user experiences. For decades, you have turned to APM solutions to answer the fundamental questions. What's slow? What's broken? Where are my users experiencing high latency? And where are they hitting errors? High-volume applications generate tens and hundreds of terabytes of tracing data every day. And storing all those traces is expensive. Hence, in monolithic applications where requests run on a single host, the prevailing strategy became sampling at the host, keeping in errors and latency. And this worked pretty well until today, where applications are moving from a monolithic architecture to distributed systems. From a single request traveling across multiple microservices, containers, serverless functions, the sampling strategy at the host has started to break down. In distributed systems, developers care about three things: completeness, errors, and high latency. In order to achieve completeness, the sampling decision had to be made at the start of a request and propagated downstreams. This gives guaranteed completeness, but no guarantee over errors and latency, as these can and do happen downstream. To achieve all three, you either retain all the traces, which is prohibitively expensive, or you cleverly find a way to decide retention at the end of a trace. That is, when it's known if an error occurred or the trace was high latency. This analysis brought us to one important insight: ingest everything. Only store what's important. In fact, this insight enables us to go beyond just completeness, errors, and latency. And with this, I'm excited to announce tracing without limits in APM today. Here. Your live data has no sampling. Search all your traces with unparalleled visibility in an outage or incident. Your historical data is retained on tail-based decisions, guaranteeing to keep completeness, errors, latency outliers, infrequent code paths. Going even a step further, you decide what's important. Like keeping all transactions greater than $1,000 on your checkout endpoint, you got it. The best part? It's 100% hosted and managed by Datadog. Since only important traces persist by default, tracing still remains affordable. And since all the storage and analysis happens on server side, it's simple to deploy and manage. All this with tracing without limits. Now that we have all your tracing data and enriched with the tags that you've added, can your APM solution quickly tell you the root cause of that error and latency? Is it a single host, shard, container, product, page, customer, user, or any of those 100 tags that you've added? Well, today we unveil Trace Outliers. Sure? It's worth it. We have taken the rich span data we ingest and correlated it with those tags so that Datadog now automatically tells you the root cause of that error or latency. And with this, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew to show us the power of tracing without limits and trace outliers in action.
Imagine it's Black Friday. I'm an application developer at an e-commerce site builder. Our customers are merchants who build their website on our platform. Their end users are shoppers who make purchases. So now I've just received an alert for a small increase in the error rate for the checkout endpoint specific to our enterprise tier merchants. Any change in error rate could represent a loss in revenue. This is something we need to get to the bottom of and fast. Using tracing without limits, I can use the APM live search to search through 100% of my traces in real time. This means I can access every checkout across every endpoint for every end user here. In live search, there is no sampling occurring. Now to go back to the alert I received before. Let's say I want to filter down this data specifically to the checkout endpoint, specifically to the enterprise tier as well, and only for errors here. From here, I can see exactly the traces I need to troubleshoot this issue. So now clicking into a request here, what we'll see specifically is an error, 503 error. Payment service reported 503 unavailable. What this tells me is there's an issue right now with our third-party payment provider. However, to get more details about this error here, what we'll do is click into a related log. These logs are directly correlated with this request. They've had the trace ID automatically injected here. And now in this log message, I could get more information. Specifically, what I see here is payment rejected for a transaction due to number of requests exceeding 1,000. So what does that mean? That means in a minute period, let's say we make 1,005 requests, only 5 of those have this error. This error is extremely rare, infrequent, and exactly the kind of trace we would need here in the APM live search. So now, because it's Black Friday, I want to know if there are any other issues in my infrastructure here. I want to be sure that there's no errors, no slowness, so let's take a look further. So using trace outliers here, we can now automatically analyze all incoming traffic here to give you root cause analysis for errors and slowness. We'll correlate them to tags. What we notice here on the checkout endpoint is the tag coupon code Black Friday currently has an issue with latency right now. Let's click into a trace to see what the issue may be happening. So now when we click into a trace here, what we'll notice is when we hit our shopping cart and we apply this coupon code here, we reach out to a serverless Lambda function. This serverless Lambda function calls out to a database of coupons to validate the request here. And we can see the limiting of this function in that load campaign database span. Now in the metadata as well, what we'll notice is when we load this campaign database, it's taking up a lot of memory. Essentially what we'll have to do here is add more memory to the serverless function to remove this latency outlier. Using tracing without limits is critical for any company, but especially for some of the largest companies in the world with the highest volume applications. That's why we are so lucky here today to have Justin Wright, Vice President of Architecture and Development at Thomson Reuters, to talk about how they use tracing without limits today.
Thanks, Andrew. Great demo. So I'm really excited to be here today and share with you a little bit more about Thomson Reuters and how we're leveraging Datadog to help with some of our monitoring challenges. Thomson Reuters is a pretty big company. We've got about 25,000 employees worldwide, and we have roughly many thousand technologists as well working on all of our products. We provide news and information services to legal professionals, tax professionals, corporations, and government entities. Last year, we had about $5.5 billion in revenue. And in our news business alone, we have about 1 billion unique readers every single day. Over our whole product portfolio, we have about 460,000 customers. So we know a little bit about monitoring at scale, and we have had a few challenges in that area I'm going to talk to you about today. So we have roughly 350 unique products. Each of those products is highly distributed across many thousand services, microservices, serverless containers. We run on tens of thousands of hosts, and we generate over 5 billion unique traces each and every day. Now that's on average. So we also have unpredictable peaks that we have to deal with as well. So the first use case I'm going to talk to you about today is a new product we just launched at the end of February called Thomson Reuters Panoramic. Now Panoramic is an entirely new market for us. It's all about connecting the practice of law with the business of law. We spent over a year doing customer research and development on this product. We had no idea how much usage we would get, what a simulated user would do, how that activity would be represented in the product, and we wanted to make sure that we maintain a good experience for our customers. So what we were able to do with LiveTail is keep an eye on exactly what's going on, have visibility into what our customers are doing in a brand new product, and be able to determine any sort of issues before they become a severe incident. Now, on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, we have many products that have been around for a long time and have quite significant users. We scale for tax season every year, every quarter, and we have unpredictable peaks in our Reuters news business when there's an breaking news story. So what we want to do is be able to selectively keep all traces for some of our products so that we can have all of the information and details around for later analysis and troubleshooting. And lastly, I mentioned 460,000 customers, so that's a lot of data to wade through. When something's going on, we really quickly want to be able to identify, is this a systemic issue, or we've got a problem in our code base, a recent deploy or configuration, or is one of our users or one of our customers perhaps doing something that's a little out of the ordinary. So what we're able to do with leveraging our tags that we have is be able to quickly get anomaly detection from Datadog, where we can see if one of our customers is causing an issue or if they're having a problem with their environment. This has been extremely helpful, getting us to root cause analysis much, much faster, which provides us efficiencies and also a better experience for our customers. So in quick summary, from brand new products where you don't have any idea of what to expect in terms of utilization or scale, to existing products that have many, many millions or billions of requests that you're trying to make sure everyone has a unique and happy customer experience, to do an automatic root cause analysis and saving time for remediation of an issue. Datadog has been extremely helpful for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. We have enjoyed partnering with you and Thomson Reuters on this. To recap, tracing without limits is in beta today. Search all your traces with no sampling. Persist the traces that you care about: complete, errors, latency outliers. You are in control to decide what traces are important to retain. And the best part, it is completely affordable, cost controllable, and 100% SaaS. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanshi. Thank you, Priyanshi. So far, we've talked about measuring specific customer experience, but it's all mostly been on the server side. As we all know, how applications are really behaving in the hands of customers requires observing not just server-side data, but also observing specific customer interactions with the application, or the specific application interactions with the customer. We've been working hard on this problem for the last last few months, or years, months. And here from our digital experience team is Gabriel-James to show us more.
Wow, great to be here. A few months ago, we launched Datadog Synthetics. It was our first step in the world of monitoring end user experience. Since 2010, the goal of Datadog has always been to break down silos to ensure development and operation team could work together easily. We are now moving up the stack and finding ways to give you a better picture of performance from the perspective of the final users of your products. A study by Google shows, for example, that Pinterest could increase signups by 15% by decreasing the perceived wait time by 40%. On the other hand, the BBC found they lost an additional 10% of users for every additional second their site took to load. And this is why we care about digital experience management. We currently allow you to test your user journeys and endpoints from 13 public locations around the globe. But what if you're looking to monitor internal applications or from a very specific location like a remote office? Starting today, private locations will allow you to set up a new synthetic test region in less than 5 minutes and have them displayed just like all the other locations we provide. You can then test any endpoint and any user journey, even if they are not on the public internet. For instance, we could set up a private location right here in New York to alert our engineering team should end user experience from the Dash Explore floor, right over there, not meet our SLAs. But imagine all of a sudden, one of the critical features we were to demo today stops working. For example, imagine the UI allowing users to reindex logs from archives stops working. You are alerted by a failing synthetic test, but now what? Remember, back in the days, whenever an end-to-end test, whenever a user journey in production stopped working, you had to reproduce the issue, then open your console to search for front-end errors, understand the issue comes from the back-end, and then investigate every piece of software involved in it to understand where the issue comes from. Well, now, you can go much faster. Starting today, alerts from Synthetics will automatically come with the relevant traces and logs, allowing you to skip all of these steps and get straight to the root cause. For every request made during the navigation of a browser test, and every request made during an API test, we will display the backend trace triggered. You not only get alerted about a symptom of end-user pain, but also with all the context you will need to troubleshoot and identify the root cause, whether it be a problem on your front-end, back-end API, or even a network connectivity issue between you and your users. But let's see that in action. This is a browser test that we have recorded to ensure that all the time, the sign-up to Datadog and the main page of the Synthetic app work correctly. And here you can see the test is failing. First, I will review the screenshots to understand what happened to the script. And I noticed the error. Then I will check my front-end errors. And I find a 502 error, meaning from the front-end side, we are blind, and the issue is on the back-end side. We can then jump to the exact back-end trace associated with it and identify the related error. In that case, coming from undefined value handled in this back-end service. when you start working on the optimization of your applications, you need to know more. You need information about the latencies in the real world and the number of users experiencing them. This is a lot of data to collect and analyze, but else, how could you prioritize your work? I am glad to present you the solution, because our brand new product, Real User Monitoring, can help you with that. Real User Monitoring collects telemetry on every user session on your website and web application. Tightly linked to Datadog APM, you will be able to see traces of front-end performance alongside back-end traces. It means if the performance of your products are not good enough, you can understand at one glance whether the issues come from the front-end or the back-end. By seeing the differences across browser versions, geography, and devices, you can investigate the performance issues and make sure your products stays on top of your users' expectations. Using information about the real usage of your product, you can prioritize your actions to improve the performance of the most visited pages first. Real User Monitoring is in beta starting today. Moving up the stack is an exciting journey. We believe in the added value of offering you products contributing directly in the improvement of the experience of your customers. But these days, users interact with your business in more than just web browsers. Please welcome Hugo, who will tell you more about that.
Thank you, Gabriel. How many times have you checked your phone during this keynote? 5 times? 50 times? I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but for me, it was closer to 50. Today, mobile app users stand amongst the most loyal and premium to your company. Them having a seamless end-user experience on mobile is absolutely key for your business, because anything going wrong, like this annoying spinning wheel, can cause them to live forever. In other words, when it comes to mobile, every millisecond counts. I'm very proud to reveal that today we're announcing Mobile RUM. We support both native languages, Java and Kotlin for Android, Swift and Objective-C for iOS, as well as hybrid frameworks such as React Native. By including one minimal, lightweight SDK into your mobile apps, you'll be able to send logs, metrics, and traces automatically correlated with your server data, all of which can be seen in one place on Datadog. Soon, you'll be able to easily identify whether these irritating slowdowns in an app were caused by inefficient asset loading, a poor network, or a slow API server call, and even point to the exact backend SQL query thanks to APM and tracing. Our APIs were designed to be highly customizable to match your specific use cases. We've listened to your feedback, and we noticed that most mobile teams either lack sufficient data or are drowning in noisy, inactionable information. That's why data in Mobile RUM can be scoped to pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. By combining this with Log's infinite cardinality, you'll have all the tools necessary to monitor the performance of your apps. We're in beta right now. Please come to the RUM booth for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. I think we need to monitor his screen time. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and it all boils down to 3 key things. First, send in high volumes of data into Datadog, whether it's metrics, logs, or traces, and Datadog will let you manage it and use it at scale without sacrificing performance or unit economics. Second, we've introduced features like Infrastructure Watchdog to surface interesting things that you wouldn't have looked for otherwise. And third, new areas like network monitoring, RUM, and mobile monitoring paint a fuller, richer picture that helps you pinpoint when problems are in these areas and specifically troubleshoot these areas. And we built all of this so you can provide best experiences to your customers, because ultimately that's what matters. Now, we've only given you a flavor of what we've been working on to complete the monitoring picture for you, to make sense of every part of your application from back end to front. Like Alexis mentioned earlier, your engagement has been a huge influence on everything that we do at Datadog. And off stage today, you'll have Alexis, me, all of our product management team looking forward to deeper conversations so we can learn how to build more things that are relevant to you, that help you solve your problems every day. And again, thank you. And here's Ilan for some important announcements for the rest of the day.